The Mishnah says that a person marries a woman with chulin shenishchut bazora, a non-consecrated animal that's slaughtered in the Beis Hamikdash. So the Mishnah says it's in Surah No, therefore she's animal kodeshes. Menani mili. How do we know chulin shenishchut bazora is something that you're not permitted to benefit from? Because we're going to show later it's machlokes tanoim whether you can benefit from it or you cannot benefit from it on a Torah level. Omer Reb Yochanan Shem Reb Meir. Omer Torah. The Torah says, Shchot sheli b'sheli, slaughter mine in mine, meaning in my domain, v'shaloch b'shaloch, and you should slaughter yours in your domain. Mas sheli b'shaloch oser. What happens if you slaughter something that's consecrated in the ordinary domain, which is called shchutei chutz? Af shaloch b'shelios. Just as if you slaughter mine in your domain, the Torah says explicitly, it's also nobody argues. You're not permitted to benefit from it. Identically, if you slaughter yours in my domain, it's the equivalent of that. So what is the basis? We're saying it's a svara. It's logic. Just as mine in your domain, what is the consequence of that act of slaughter? It becomes forbidden to benefit from. Identically, when you slaughter yours in my domain, it becomes forbidden to benefit from. So the Gemara says, no, it's not comparable. Maybe the reason why you have such a serious consequence when you slaughter mine in your domain is because you have a liability of koris. If that's the case, the liability should be koris when a person slaughters chulin bazora, which we'll see in a moment, which is not the case. When are you in violation of shchutei chutz? Something consecrated says you did not bring it to the Pesach Ol Moed. Lahakriv korban lashem v'nichras. You did not bring it to the Pesach Ol Moed to bring the korban to Hashem, and you will be cut off. Al korban onish kores. So what's the inference? For slaughtering a korban not in Pesach Ol Moed, is there a liability of kores? Al chunsh tishbazora ein onish kores. The inference is, but if you do one slaughters chulin bazora in the sanctuary, there is no onish koris. 1 second. I understand that. Good. Because it's not a korban. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, but we're equating as mine in your domain, you're not permitted to benefit. So yours in my domain, you're not able to benefit. So the Gemara says, but it's not comparable. Equal mifrach. We're able to differentiate, and therefore it's a refutation on the basis. Maybe the reason why you're not permitted to benefit because there's a liability of koris. You see the seriousness of the action. But if you slaughter chum bazara where you don't have that level of liability, maybe you're permitted to benefit from it. Although you're not permitted to do the act, but maybe you're permitted to benefit from it. Maybe you're even permitted to eat it. We'll see. So now it's interesting. The Gemara says that if you bring a korban, let's say at nighttime, there's a thing called, referred to, we had this at the beginning of Erevin. It's in Kochim too, but it's called Psichas Delosos. It says, one of you in violation of Shchutei Chutz, because it should be brought Pesach Ol Moed. It should be brought in the Ol Moed. In the Mishkan, there were doors. Or in the Beis Mikdash, there were doors. It says, what happens if you bring the korban before Psichas Delosos? It's after dawn. You cannot bring a korban at nighttime. Right? Slaughtering korban at night is not valid. So let's say it's dawn already has come, so it's time. But the Kohanim or the Levim, they didn't open the doors of the sanctuary yet. And you bring a korban, and you bring the korban, it's not a valid korban. The korban only is valid if the doors are open. The doors first have to be open, and then you bring the korban. It's not. So that's what I'm telling you. It's not valid. You have to have psichos dlosos. The doors have to be open. So at nighttime, you're not able to bring a korban. Nighttime is not the time to bring. So let's say a person would take a korban at nighttime and slaughter it outside the Beis Hamikdash. Is he liable for koris? Shchutei chutz? He's not. Of course, it has to be at a time, because Torah says, if you're bringing the korban, it has to be brought Pesach Ol Moed. But at the time that you're slaughtering, you're not able to bring Pesach Ol Moed. As a result of that, there's no liability of Shchutei chutz. You're not invited. It's Nisa Doraisa. You did the wrong thing, But to have the liability, if shchutei chutz doesn't have the liability of shchutei chutz. It's not considered nighttime. If the mizbeach, what? Let's say the mizbeach would be damaged. The halacha is you can't bring the korban if the mizbeach was damaged. Can't bring it. The mizbeach has to be in a repaired state. Okay. It's not valid. It's not valid. Nothing. You destroyed something which had value. That's all you did. No. Correct. So if that is the case, what is the basis for a shchut? It's not comparable. Shchutei chutz, we see there's liability of koreis. That's the reason why you're not permitted to benefit from. However, chul shnishba zora, which does not have the liability of koreis, maybe you're permitted to benefit from it. That's the first question. Elor Abaye mehocha. It says in the three psukim which seem to be superfluous. It says v'shochto, v'shachar oso, v'shachar oso. These three psukim are written by Shlomim. You shall slaughter it, shochto, shachar oso, v'shachar oso, tlosakra yiseri. These three psukim seem to be extra superfluous. Ma Talmud Lomer. What's the value of these psukim? What are these psukim communicating? Fisha Nemar. Now, something chiddush, because I don't recall it. Rashi cites it, but it's clear from this Gemara that that's the halacha. Now, in the midbar, when we were in the desert, if you wanted to eat meat, in what context were you only permitted to eat meat? Only as a korban. You wanted to bring meat, you would consecrate it as a shlomim, as a peace offering, and then the majority of the meat was given to the person who brought the korban, certain percentage went to the kohen, and certain part was sacrificed to mizbeach. That was the only context you were permitted to eat meat. Otherwise, you couldn't eat meat, right? Because what is the Torah? Because it says when we came to Eretz Yisrael, the Torah says ki yirchak mimcha hamokum. So when you were in the desert, how far was the Mishkan from anybody? The whole camp was 12 miles by 12 miles, which is less than 12 miles, a meal. So therefore, the Torah says, if you want to eat meat, bring it as a korban. But when in Eretz Yisrael now that our borders have expanded, ki yirchak mimcha hamokum, now that you're in a distance, it's too difficult to make the trek to Yerushalayim to bring the korban. The Torah says, and you have a desire to eat meat, you're permitted to slaughter the animal to eat the meat. Okay? So what it says? Because you're at a distance, that's why v'zavachto. So what are we speaking about? Slaughtering what? You're slaughtering chulin. When are you permitted to slaughter chulin? Because it's richuk mokum, because you're at a distance. So it says, the richuk mokum atozoveach. Where do you do an act of slaughtering? The richuk mokum. What's richuk mokum outside of the Beis Hamikdash? V'atozovech b'mokum korov. Because if it's mokum korov, because if you're in the sanctuary, that's where you bring the korban. The only reason why the Torah allows you to slaughter chulin is because you're at a distance from the Beis Hamikdash. But if the Mishkan would always be available to us within close proximity, the Torah would never allow chulin. Because in what context will we eat the animal? As a korban. So therefore, so what are we excluding? What are you not permitted to do in the Azorah? Okay? Now, what kind of animal would you bring as a korban? It had to be unblemished. So I'd say, you know something? Torah says, if you have an unblemished animal and you're in Eretz Yisrael now, we are at a distance where it's not convenient to bring it as a korban, although it's unblemished, you're permitted to slaughter it outside the Beis Hamikdash. Right? Not like at one time that when it was unblemished, if you'd want to slaughter that, in what context did you have to slaughter it? As a korban. So what about if you're dealing with a balmum? A balmum, a blemished korban, animal, you couldn't bring in the Beis Hamikdash. You couldn't bring in the Mishkan. So Rashi says that in the Midbar, if you'd have a blemished animal and you wanted to slaughter it, you're able to slaughter it. Food, chulin, non-consecrated. From the Gemara Chulin, when it discusses this whole subject matter, it seems over there that Bosa taiva. Bosa taiva means just to satisfy your desire was not permitted in the midbar in any circumstance. It's clear from this Gemara. Rashi says, we'll see Rashi in a moment, explicitly, Bosa taiva, if you would want to eat meat just for desire, that's only if it could be brought as a korban. If it was tamimim, if it was unblemished and it could be brought as a korban, you would not permit it to eat it as chulin. But if it was blemished, which it couldn't be brought as a korban in the midbar, then you're permitted to slaughter it as an ordinary animal and eat it. No, it's clear from the Gemara. The Gemara. No. In the midbar. So it's understood. That's exactly what the Torah is saying. Even though in the midbar, when it was unblemished, you could only eat that animal, only as a korban. But now that you're a distance from the Beis Hamikdash, we allow you to bring that even to satisfy your desire. But let's say in the midbar, if you wanted to eat that animal, you couldn't bring it as a korban because it's blemished. You're permitted to slaughter it. So bosa taiva, when we say eating meat purely to satisfy your desire, when was it not permitted? Only if that animal could be brought as a korban. But if it couldn't be brought as a korban, even the midbar was permitted. Now the story, we understand the story. When the Jews complained in the midbar, they want meat. So Hashem says, so Moshe Rabbeinu was upset. He says, they have all this cattle and they have these flocks. They want meat, let them eat meat. That's what Moshe. So Hashem says, Yad Hashem Tiktzor. But that would indicate, if I don't provide, they're complaining. Even though it's a baseless complaint, it seems to be, it's beyond God's ability. So Hashem says, we'll give him the slug, the quail. And that's where the tragedy happened. People, whoever ate of the quail, they died. What do you mean? You have millions of people want meat. Could you bring enough korbanos to satisfy them? But if you're talking about non-consecrated, you have flocks, you have herds, you want meat, go slaughter your own cattle and your own flocks. But what do you mean? Bosa taiva is not permitted. The answer is, bosa taiva is permitted. It's only if it could be brought as a korban, it's not permitted. But if it's blemished, you're permitted to slaughter in the midbar. Do you know how difficult? You know how difficult it was to find an animal that was not a balmum? What do you think you give? The Gemara says in Psochim and other occasions. What do you give 30 days? What do you begin discussing Hilchas Pesach 30 days before Yom Tov? Because it took a month to be able to locate an animal that wasn't blemished. That's how difficult it was. It wasn't simple to find unblemished animals. And they had a whole, even in the Beis Hamikdash, they had an area where they would have pre-checked animals to make sure that you had an animal that was qualified to be brought as a korban. It wasn't simple. No, I'm not saying that. I'm not bringing proof from that. I'm saying with what we're saying now we understand the claim against Klal Yisro. Why was it a claim against it? What Moshe Rabbeinu was saying. They could slaughter. If it's blemished, you're permitted to eat it. It's blemished. You can't bring a blemished animal. What do you mean? The answer is because they're looking to find complaint, to find fault with God. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu is saying. Don't give them. They're only looking to find fault. So Hashem says, but I have to respond because Hayad Hashem Tiktzor. Because they say, see, he's not providing. He's not able to provide. They didn't. They chose because they didn't want to slaughter their flocks. They wanted to have flocks and herds for later. You slaughter it, that you're killing the goose that lays the golden egg. They had the month. They wanted meat. Why was it boring? But any conceivable taste you would want, you would taste, right? So what's the problem, right? So it's a question. So how long has this question bothered you? Right? Okay. The Gemara says, when Moshe Rabbeinu speaks about the money, he says, "Vayancha vayariveko, vayachilches hamon." Hashem afflicted us. He starved us when He fed us the man. So the Gemara asks in Yuma, what do you mean? If the man sated us, and any conceivable taste that we wanted, we assume that taste and that value. So what do you mean He afflicted us and He starved us? Vayachilches hamon. We had everything we wanted. right? Only upside, no downside. And according to, there's a question, when you imagined you wanted it to have a certain taste, was it only in taste or even in texture? There's one opinion, it took on the texture of actually whatever you wanted it to taste like. Meat, whatever the item, fish, whatever it was. So what do you mean, vayiveko? That's the Gemara's question. The Gemara says, because the visual aspect of food is essential to be satisfied. And therefore, a blind person can never be satisfied because he can't see the food he's eating. Therefore, on Shabbos and Yom Tiv, you should eat in an illuminated location to be able to have Oneg Shabbos, to be able to be satisfied with the food that you're eating. Right? Visual presentation is key to what? To being able to enjoy the food, to be satisfied with the food. So therefore, they had them on. Didn't satisfy them. That's Vayantcha Riveka. We want the real fate. But that was the test. You know, many years ago, when you went to yeshiva, it's not like today. There was no air conditioning. The food wasn't at the quality of today. Far from it. You had two types of students. The ones that were always complained about the food and the room and their amenities, and other people didn't complain. What was the difference? If you're there to study, it's okay. It's something you do. You sleep there, you eat there. But if that is an essential in your life, the accommodation, then you complain. The question is, what is the essential? Same idea. So the Gemara asks, because it says, so tmimim, unblemished animals that you can bring in the Beis Hamikdash, min other rabbis bali mumin. So a korban, we say berichuk mokom atozoveach, something you could slaughter berichuk mokom, you should not bring in the Beis Hamikdash. In the Midbar, you could only bring it in the Mishkan. But now, you bring it outside. But what could you bring in the Midbar? That's only unblemished. But blemish you couldn't. So how do I know that if it's a blemished animal, if you slaughter it in the Azorah, in the sanctuary, how do we know it's a Torah violation? How do we know? You want to say something? Balimumin, right? Minay the rabbis balimumin. Marbani balimumin shekain min hamachshir. Yeah? Of course, it's the species. It's a little bit of a stretch. We'll see in a moment, Rashi. Logically, you could say, because it is the species that you could bring if it would not be blemished. So therefore, that's included, berichuk mokum. So Gemara asks me, now the rabbis is a chayo. What about if you have an undomesticated animal? The species has no relevance to the Beis Hamikdash, right? So if that's the case, how do we know that the Torah prohibition of chun ba'azorah even applies to a species which has no relevance to the Beis Hamikdash? Gemara says, even that, we can do a stretch on that one. How's that? Now, what's the halacha if you consecrate an animal unblemished, subsequently becomes blemished? It's called a balmum. Okay? And so what are you supposed to do with that animal? You're supposed to redeem it. It's called pidyon. You redeem it onto money, you purchase a new animal. The new animal is brought in the place of the original animal, because the kedusha is transfer of the old animal, and it goes on to the new animal you purchase. You bring that as the original korban. Now, that animal that was redeemed, do you have any restrictions? Ernie. So the halacha is, it's also begizav avoda. You're not permitted to work with it. You're not permitted to shear it. All you could do with it is you slaughter it for its meat. That's all you could do with it. No, you can marry a woman with it. Right? It's not specifically. Gizav avoda, shearing and working with it. Okay? That you're not permitted to do. But slaughtering it for meat, you're permitted. That's its value. See, but what's the reason? What's the reason? See, even though you've redeemed it, it retains a degree of kedusha. Since initially it was elevated to have relevance to being brought as a korban on the mizbeach, as much as you redeem it, there's a residue of that original kedusha that remains on it, which I'll show you in a moment what the proof is. There's a residue of kedusha's mizbeach. So you would think, if that's the case, are you permitted to eat it in a contaminated state? Chulin, non-consecrated, you eat in a contaminated state. But over here, if we're saying there's a residue of kedusha, Maybe you're not permitted to eat in the contaminated state. How do we know that psulei hamikdoshim, you're permitted to eat in the contaminated state? So it's an explicit pasuk in the Torah. The Torah says it's kitzvi v'chayo, that the psulei mikdoshim are no different than the deer. Now, a deer is an undomesticated animal. It's a species that cannot be brought as a korban. So just as the deer, you can permit it to eat in a contaminated state, psulei mikdoshim, you're also permitted to eat in the contaminated state. That's the limud. That's the why we're comparing the psulei mikdoshim to the deer. But from there we also learn out, where does the Torah speak about zvicha, slaughtering, about it domesticated? So from there that the Torah is comparing the psulei mikdoshim, that it could be eaten in a contaminated state as the tzivayol, the Torah is saying, just as the domesticated species needs shechita, if you want to eat the undomesticated species, it also needs shechita. That's considered explicit in the Torah. So the undomesticated species is identical to the domesticated species, okay? So since the Torah is equating one to another, so we say chulin bazor applies, even though it cannot be brought as a korban, but since the Torah is equating one to another in a certain context, chulin bazor applies even to the chayo. So now the Gemara says, what about the bird? The bird, minayin l'rab sophos, right? Because what is a bird? A bird itself, the bird that was brought in the Azor was what? Was malika, wasn't shchita. Okay? And it doesn't say anywhere in the Torah that a bird has to be slaughtered. It doesn't say. Is it machlokas in tchulin? Machlokas tanoim? Shchita min ha'of, min ha'torah minayin. Does one have to slaughter a bird? Whatever, you just pierce its, you just cut off its head. Whatever way you want. Maybe you're permitted. So we rule halacha, it's a Torah law. It's a machlokas tanoim. Whether shchita min ha'of, whether you have to slaughter a bird, and the halacha is you only have to slaughter one sign. An animal, domestic, undomesticated, you have to cut the kota and veshet. The trachea and the esophagus, the majority. A bird, you only have to cut one of the simanim, either the esophagus or the trachea, not both. That's the halacha. But shchita is not explicit in the Torah. So maybe a bird, which in the Beis HaMikdash was maliko, and outside it's not explicit. How do we know that if you slaughter a bird in the Azora, it's also considered chulin b'Azora? That it's a Torah violation? Talmud loma v'shchoto. V'shochet oso v'shochet oso. Lochel yochel lo yishchot. From there I learn you're not permitted. Meaning the shlomim you slaughter, but the bird you don't slaughter. It's the inference. Because we have 3 psukim regarding shlomim. This you do, that you don't. Now the Gemara asks a question. Good. You're not permitted. Torah violation. But how do I know the consequence is that you're not permitted to eat it? Right? Maybe you're permitted to eat it. You shouldn't have done it. But you did it. Lo yishchot. Vim shochat yemuter. How do we know? Maybe it should be Talmud. Lo makiyirchak mimcho hamokom v'zovachto. You hear this? The Torah says, when are you permitted to eat meat? Kiyirchak mimcho hamokom. V'zovachto. Vochalto, it says, when you're at a distance from the Beis HaMikdash, v'zovachto vochalto. That's when you're permitted to slaughter and eat. So we're associating zovachto to vochalto. When you're permitted to slaughter, you're permitted to eat. Masha tozovech b'richuk mokom ato ochel. So what you slaughter, which the Torah permits, richuk mokom, that's what you eat. Yato ochel masha tozovech b'mokom korov. But you're not permitted to eat something that you slaughter in the Beis HaMikdash. So what does that come to exclude? Prat l'chon sh'tishchu ba'azora. So we have 2 things now. We've already established in svara alone that whether it's the bird, whether it's the blemished animal, the undomesticated animal, and a bird, which based on the pasuk, you're not permitted to do the act of shechita in the azara. How do we know that you're not permitted to eat it? Because we see that the v'zavachto, what is the consequence of when you're permitted to do the zvicha, the shechita, vochalta. But if you're not permitted to do the shechita, then you're not permitted to eat. Somewhere asks, but maybe that's only tmimim. The Torah says, "Richuk mokom etozoveach etovzovech b'kiruv mokom." Now, what could you slaughter the kiruv mokom? What kind of animal could you bring in the Beis HaMikdash? Unblemished. So maybe a blemished animal, maybe that kind of animal. Although you're not permitted to slaughter, maybe you're permitted to benefit from it. You're permitted to eat it. That's the worst question now. Ainli el Tmimim. That if you slaughter an unblemished animal in the Beis Hamikdash, that you're not permitted to eat. Okay, because it can be brought as a korban. Haruim l'korev minayin. Yeah, haruim l'korev minayin l'rabos balim mumin. But an animal that cannot be brought because it's blemished, how do we know that if you slaughter it, you're not permitted to eat it? Marbani balim mumin. Shkem min machsher min hakosher. Because it's the species that could be brought. No. Now we're speaking again. We're saying we're extending the svara ultimately even to what? Originally said maybe it's svara. We said no, the svara applies even for Yisro Achila. They're equating A to B, B to A. Originally we said that's only permission to slaughter. What about if you slaughtered? How do we know that you're not permitted to eat? Because again, the pasuk only indicates what we're only allowing to do b'richuk mokom because you're not able to bring it in the Beis Hamikdash. So now we're asking. That's where the eating is contingent on whether you're permitted to slaughter. So we're saying that because now we're talking about the Yisro Achila. So the Gemara says, because min hamachshir min ayin l'rab sachai, same thing as before. How do we know that you're not permitted to eat even the undomesticated barbaniya sachaya, she b'shchita, kibeima, min ayin l'rab ofos, Talmud loba v'shochat, v'shochat oso, v'shochat oso, shchoto, v'shochat oso. Stop. Now let's stop for a moment. Ultimately, the conclusion is we have three psukim. The three psukim is the basis for the blemished animal, for the undomesticated animal, and for the bird. That's the conclusion of the Gemara. Because I have the psukim. But if I wouldn't have the psukim, we'd be able to address everything except the bird. Okay? But now that I have the psukim, the three psukim address every one of the situations. But now the Gemara is a good question. That's only regarding Yisro Achila. How do we know Yisro Hano? Because it says, V'zavachta v'achalta. When the slaughtering is permitted, then you're permitted to eat. When it's not, you're not permitted to slaughter, you're not permitted to eat. That's eating. What about benefiting? How do we know maybe you're permitted to benefit from it? Yochol lo yishchot, v'mshochat, yishlechenu l'klovim. But if you slaughtered it, you're not permitted to eat it, so what do you do with it? You feed it to the dogs. But what about, but you're permitted to benefit from it? It's a nevela. Even though you did shchita, you're not permitted to eat it, but benefit. Now it's interesting. It says, there's a pasuk in next week's parshas, Mishpatim. It says, quotes the pasuk, Bosa besoder, treifo. It says, the meat in the field is treifo. And then it says, Lakel tashlichan oso. It says, Lo sochelon, Lakel tashlichan oso. You should throw it to the dog. Lakel tashlichan oso. Now we had a Gemara in Chulin. What's the halacha if you slaughter an animal and you find an unborn calf in its womb? It's discussed, it's ben pekua. That the shechita of the mother on a Torah level allows you to eat the calf, although it wasn't slaughtered. Because anything that's found within the mother is considered slaughtered. What happens? You slaughter the mother, at the time of the shechita, the calf sticks out one of its legs. So it's no longer within the mother, within the body of the mother. So that's called basoda. It's out of the mechitza. It's not within the confines of the... So good. The whole idea why the shechita of the mother affects the child, the calf, because the calf is within the mother. It's within the confines of the mother. It's within the mechitza of the mother. But if the leg is protruding, so it's not within the mother. So the Mishnah says in Chulin, so when you slaughter the mother, everything but that leg is permitted. So what do you have to do? You have to cut off you slaughter the animal, and then you cut that leg off. Because that leg was not affected, you can't slaughter the leg. You can't slaughter the animal because after it's born, the calf, because the calf is ready, has a slaughtered status. Shechita ready, it's considered it's been slaughtered. Right? And you can't slaughter the leg, so what do? So you have to cut it off, because that's soda bosa besoda treifa lo sochelon. The boser is basoder. It's out of bounds. It's not within the confines any longer. Therefore, lo sachelon. So what do you do with it? Lakel tashlichan oso. So what's the inference? That you throw to the kelev. But something else that was taken out of its confines, or was not within its location, you can't give it to the dog. So what does that mean? Why can't I give it to the dog? Evidently, it's Yisro Hano, that you're not permitted to benefit from it. That which the animal is outside of its confines, its leg, that you give to the dog. That's basar b'sodeh. It's in the sodeh treifa lo sachelun. But something which was brought in the confines, not of the animal, which it shouldn't have been brought there, such as chulin b'azara, you cannot give it to the dog. Let's read Rashi inside. Second line. How do we derive from this pasuk that if you slaughter chulin in the sanctuary, you're not permitted to benefit? If this pasuk is speaking about the meat that went out of its bounds, the fetus, the unborn calf extended its foot outside of its mother at the time of the shechita. And what does it mean to basar b'sodeh? Go chiyotze basar chutz lemichitzoso begolui kisodeh. As a field is obvious, it's exposed. The leg was exposed, was revealed. She'ein lo b'chitzo. It's out of. It doesn't have mechitza. It's not within. As the field doesn't have mechitza. Hariu ketreifo. We classify it as like an animal that it's found with a defect. V'lo sochlu. Umid b'seifa. And what is then it says? And what do you do with it? Lakel tashlifnoso. You should give it to the dog. Lemute chun shnish b'azora v'dor shochi. And this is the way it's interpreted. Also, who the nesar b'yitzias mechitzo. The part of the animal which is not permitted because it was out of bounds, out of its bound, and it was not affected by the slaughtering of the mother. But non-consecrated animal that was slaughtered in the sanctuary and nesorim, because it's something which should have not have been brought within those confines. Okay, just have a moment. Okay. Now the Torah tells over a story. We have about a minute. No? Ashkachinu bar Yehuda Rav Yosef Rav Shmuel Breidu Rav Bar Chana. The Gemara tells over a story. Mar Yehuda comes upon Rav Yosef and Rav Shmuel Breidu Rav Bar Chana. Davikaima Pischa de Rabba. They were outside the Beis Medrash Rabbah, the doorway of Rabbah. We'll see, Rabbah was the Rebbe. Omar Lahu. They say to him, Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, Hamakadish Pet Chamor. Person marries a woman with the first issue of a donkey. B'basam cholav, milk and meat that was cooked in b'chun shnish v'azora. Reb Shimon Omer Kodeshes. Reb Shimon says, because you're permitted to benefit, she's married. Kodeshes. Chamom enim Kodeshes. Almo, chun shnish v'azora lo Reb Shimon, lav doraisa. So evidently, you see, according to Reb Shimon, if he says Mukudeshes, if you use chun shnish v'azora, evidently he's of the opinion it's not a Torah violation. It's lav doraisa. Well, we'll see in a moment. No, the Gemara understands. It's even to do the slaughtering. We'll see in a moment. Ureminu, Reb Shimon Omer chun shnish v'azora yisrafu. Reb Shimon says that if you slaughter chun b'azora, it should be burnt. We'll leave this for tomorrow.